Even in a virtual setting, we like to begin our events by acknowledging that Concordia's campuses are located on unceded Indigenous lands. These lands are known as the Kanien'kehá:ka Nation, which is recognized as the custodian of the lands and waters on and near where Concordia is today. Montreal, or Tiohtià:ke, was historically a gathering place for many First Nations. Today, it is home to a diverse population of Indigenous and other peoples. I mention this to you to show Concordia's continued respect and appreciation for local Indigenous peoples and their cultures within the Montreal community, and to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in improving relationships between nations. As a settler myself, I come with respect for the land that I am on today and for the people who have and do reside here. And I encourage all of you to learn more about the Indigenous lands that you may be on or near as well. I'm so pleased that you're taking the time to join us today. This session is part of our See You at Home virtual programming series. My name is Olivia Picciarelli, and I work in alumni relations here at Concordia. I will be moderating the chat environment and will relay your questions to our speaker throughout the session. First, some housekeeping. We are recording this session and will share it with you along with the PowerPoint slides in the coming weeks. If you happen to experience any technical issues, feel free to drop a message in the chat and a member of my team, Erin, will assist you. Today's session, titled Setting Up for Success, Why You Need a Mentor, is so relevant right now, especially for those of you who are in a transition phase. A mentor can help you gain clarity on your current role and future goals, gain a better understanding of your career trajectory, and help you build your professional network, among many other advantages. In short, a mentor can help you open doors sooner, more effectively, and more confidently. And now a little bit about our speaker, who's going to help us take those next steps. As the partner leader at Americas for CommScope, Karen, who's a BA 92 grad, is responsible for leading the Partner Pro organization and its ecosystem. She oversees the indirect partner channel, national partner management, and the full suite of CommScope solutions to enterprise partners across the Americas. Over the past 15 plus years, Karen has worked in various executive roles with GE Capital, GE Healthcare, Stanley Security, and Katz Group, contributing to her extensive business acumen and perspective of technology as a business enabler. Her depth of business expertise and leadership makes Karen a visionary, creative, and courageous sought-after speaker on topics ranging from women in leadership and mentorship to smart buildings and smart cities. Today, Karen will help us understand why mentors are such fantastic resources in our career journeys, and she'll provide us with practical guidance on getting started and on how to make mentoring work for each of us. So let's get started. Karen, I pass it over to you.
Thank you so much, Olivia. I'm hoping everybody can hear me okay. Olivia, can you give me a thumbs up? We're all good. Excellent. So thank you so much, Olivia, for that great introduction, and to the entire Concordia organization, especially the alumni organization that's given me this opportunity today to talk to you a little bit about mentoring and setting yourself up for success. So a couple of things before we start. One, please ask as many questions as you would like. This next hour or so, it really should be a learning journey for you. And so please don't hesitate to ask any questions. The next piece is, I am happy to connect post-event if needed. I know that Olivia is going to share these slides, but just in case you want to connect after that, please feel free to look me up on LinkedIn. I want to first start by just mentioning that mentorship is really a lifelong journey. So it's not about something that you engage in just at the beginning of your career or mid-career. I really do see it playing a role across the runway of your career, whether you're a mentor or a mentee, or sometimes you're actually both. You're both a mentor and a mentee. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind, that it's not specific to whether you're early in your career or mid-career. So let's kick this off. And of course, my slide, there we go. All right, so let's talk a little bit about what our agenda is today. So we're going to cover a little bit what the current landscape looks like as it pertains to mentorship. what does it look like today, why it matters, how to get started, and then we're really going to delve into some practical tips that everybody should be able to leverage and use. So before we kind of get into the details of it, I really want to start with this quote, which I think is an absolutely fantastic quote, because mentorship really isn't about making that other person like you. And I'll touch a little bit on kind of where this went awry, I'm going to say several decades ago. So, if I look back at early in my career, the kind of mentor-mentee relationship, a lot of it had to do, especially since I started off in sales, was about teaching me skills that would make me like a man. So, the mentoring was about shaking somebody's hand like a man, making eye contact, kind of using that challenger methodology and approach. And that was really about trying to make me into the image of the person who was my mentor versus kind of taking what I had and the skill sets that I had and what was authentic to me and really giving me the opportunity to create myself. And so, just something to keep in the back of your mind that, the mentoring is really about finding all of those attributes that you have as an individual and your mentor helping you bring those to the forefront and really accentuate them. So I'm going to pause for a moment and ask Olivia to bring up the poll. Here we go. And so here's our poll question. How comfortable are you with approaching a mentor? We've got 4 choices. Completely comfortable, somewhat comfortable, very hesitant, and then the last one, which is practically terrified. So if everybody can take a moment to fill that out, and then we'll move on to a little bit more of the detail as it pertains to the mentorship piece. All right, so we've got about 33% saying very hesitant, 41% saying somewhat comfortable, and then we've got a little bit of outliers, 9 at the practically terrified, and 17% on the completely comfortable piece. All right, so we've got some good feedback. Okay, so let's jump right into mentorship. So I think the most important thing to recognize when it comes to mentorship is that it's really about personal development and empowerment. And so it has a lot to do with the relationship that you're going to create as a mentee with your mentor. And so if right off the bat, the two of you don't click, it's going to be really hard to be able to generate that development and empowerment between the mentor and the mentee. So it's something to keep in the back of your mind that it is relationship based. The focus or the benefit for the mentee, there's a whole slew that come to mind, but I think the key is really on gaining some practical advice to help improve or increase your confidence as it pertains to what you're trying to achieve, identify some goals, gain some valuable insight, and make some new connections. And sometimes there's problem-solving pieces associated with that, but it's really about trying to understand how to move yourself forward in a way that is both constructive and engaging. Let's talk a little bit about the current landscape. And this has changed dramatically, I'm going to say, over the last 10 years. So if we go back 10 plus years ago, most organizations had a very formal or defined mentoring program. And so when you joined an organization, you immediately got assigned a mentor, and maybe they didn't call it a mentor. Like today, they really kind of talk about buddy programs, but you had a mentor, and the purpose of that mentor wasn't really about teaching you how to do your job. It was really about giving you oversight into the political and cultural aspects of the organization. And sometimes those things were like odd things. Don't touch Mary's coffee cup. If Tom prints something, don't take his stuff off of the printer. If you get invited to this meeting, make sure you show up 10 minutes early because this individual has, difficulty with tardiness, or they'll close the door 1 minute before the meeting starts. And so that mentoring really wasn't about how to do your job or how to learn how to do your job to get to the next level. It was really around the politics and those unknowns that existed within an organization. We've moved away from that. And what we have more so now are what I would call mentoring programs that are more like mentoring circles. So less about the individual, more so about a department or a level within an organization. Because we see more and more organizations having distributed workforces, and obviously during COVID, this has been really the de facto standard, is that we see lots of virtual or remote mentoring programs. And that's why it's really facilitated this whole idea of mentoring circles versus one-on-one mentoring. We'll talk a little bit about diversity mentoring in the next slide. But I do want to highlight that 71% of Fortune 500 companies do have some kind of mentoring program. They may not be at the forefront in terms of advertising that those mentoring programs exist within the organization, but they do exist. And it's really almost the onus being put on the employee to be able to find them within their organization versus them being presented to them when they join. Let's talk about the 5 kinds of mentorship, and I'll kind of highlight which ones we're going to talk about today, but I do want to touch on all 5. So today we're really going to talk about career mentoring, which I personally feel ties very much into reverse mentoring. The reason why I say that is that my experience has been as both a mentee and a mentor, is that when I'm mentoring someone, that they usually have insights or experiences that I am not very familiar with. And so, I'll give you a great example. Actually, I'll give you 2 great examples. I'm going to take you back to the very early days of the .com e-commerce world in the early 2000s. I was at GE at the time, and we had a reverse mentoring program because we were very focused on how do we learn more about e-commerce and leveraging e-commerce. I know this sounds ridiculous in this day and age where we've got Snapchat and TikTok. E-commerce is, the ability to buy something online through Amazon is kind of a de facto standard. But at that point in time, it was very unique. And so we brought in young individuals, most of them university students, to really teach us about e-commerce. And so there's that reverse mentoring scenario. They taught us about e-commerce. We taught them about our business. At that point, I was in the healthcare business. So we're going to talk a little bit more about career mentoring and how that ties into reverse mentoring. Just, I think the 2 go together. That's kind of going to be our focus today. Let me touch on the other 3. So diversity focused has been a very big topic, I'm going to say over the last probably 3 years, but really over the last 18 months. And the thing to note about diversity focused is that it's a little bit different than mentoring. So mentoring is about talking to an individual. So your mentor talks to the mentee talks to the mentor. The diversity focused one is really talking about the individual. And so what drove this? So what drove this was a report that I'm sure you've seen. It's been in the news probably 100 times, if not more. And it's really about the profitability, incremental profitability an organization incurs when they have a diverse workforce, where they have diverse board, diverse senior leadership team. And so that diversity focused mentorship is really about how are they going to build the diversity within their organization in order to be able to leverage this this concept of diversity and inclusion with the result of being able to increase profitability and explore the diversity and inclusion benefits as they exist today. So there's a key differentiator between talking with an individual versus talking about them. So in that diversity piece, you're talking about an individual who's not in the room with you. New manager, pretty straightforward. And that's really more so focused on what I'm going to say are the soft skills of becoming a new manager. So maybe you're a salesperson and you're a really good salesperson, they're going to make you a sales manager. Then it's about the soft skills of being able to coach and mentor your sellers versus the activities associated with actually selling. The last one is high potential employees. They kind of get coined as hypos in a lot of organizations. And this concept is really going back to, once again, I'm going to date myself. So if you go back to the times of Jack Welch at GE, he believed in this concept of a 9 box. And if you don't know what this is, I would say, please go and look it up. And it was really about how to identify high potential employees. So high on the value scale. So they demonstrate the values of the organization, and then high on the potential scale. So they can jump 2-3 levels in an organization. And what do you need to do in order to motivate, in order to compensate, and in order to keep those high potential employees, because they're your future leaders of the business. And so that's a very distinct focus when it comes to mentorship. Again, we're going to focus on the career aspect of the mentorship discussion. Let's talk a little bit about why it matters. So obviously I mentioned the whole concept of these unwritten rules: don't touch Mary's coffee cup, show up to that meeting 5 minutes before because the door closes 1 minute before the meeting starts. All of those are obviously important, and that's something that you can achieve kind of within an organization. But mentorship is more than just kind of getting or finding a mentor within an organization that you're working in, because it can expand outside of that, and it doesn't have to be somebody that you work with. It really is focused on experience and guidance. And the concept is that a mentor is going to help you achieve something that you want to achieve. So again, not focused on what the mentor wants you to achieve, really focused on what you want to be able to create as your long-term goal. And so they can help mentor you to the next level. They can be sounding boards. They can provide guidance. They can share their experiences or their recommendations on how to handle a situation or how to create opportunity for yourself. But the idea is that it really is one-on-one, and it's private to you as the individual, and it's unique to what you're trying to achieve. Let's talk a little bit about how to get started. And, because historically you would join an organization, you would get assigned a mentor. Given that that doesn't really exist today, you as a mentee have a little bit of work to do in order to be able to kick this off. So the first thing I recommend that you do is define what your purpose is or your desired outcome. Let's talk a little bit about this. In a lot of cases, I encounter individuals who are interested in me becoming a mentor for very short-term goals. So, someone at this company, I'm trying to get an interview there. Can you help me? That isn't a mentor relationship. That's really a networking opportunity. And so, you need to make sure that you're asking the right question, you're phrasing it properly. So are you looking at trying to achieve something short-term, negotiating maybe a salary, networking, getting an interview, getting introduced to someone? That's really a short-term requirement, really not a mentor-mentee piece. Or is it long-term? Are you trying to attain a specific role? Or are you trying to get into a specific work stream? Are you trying to improve your presentation skills or get on the speaking circuit? Are you trying to get into a specific industry or specific job that is of interest? So that's the first one. Define your purpose or your desired outcome and be very clear about what it is that, that you're looking for. The second piece is kind of looking internally. So are you a doer or a listener? If you're a doer, then you need a mentor who's going to give you activities or work or role plays to do versus just kind of speaking to you or at you about how you're going to accomplish something. Obviously, today, most of it is virtual. Certainly hoping that as time goes by, we'll get back to face-to-face. Are you good on video? Some people like phone better. So just some things for you to think about so that when you're looking for a mentor, you're making sure that you're matching up what fits for you and what fits for the mentor. The next piece is, especially if you're not in an organization today, or you're not in an organization that has a mentoring program, where can you find a mentoring program? Where does one exist? The Concordia Alumni Connect is a great one. It's one that I'm part of. I've done a lot of what I would call kind of short-term engagements with individuals on that. And I think it's an absolutely fabulous platform that you should leverage. Look at local associations, not-for-profit organizations. I sit on the board for one of them, which is called Women in Communications and Technology. And we have a mentoring program, which I think is just fantastic, but there are many of them out there. And so do a little bit of work and uncover which one makes sense for you based on your purpose and your desired outcome. The next piece is about doing some research and listing out some potential mentors. So the first thing you need to think about is including your why. So why are you looking for a mentor? Don't forget to look at peers. And so here's some things that that I think are kind of, I'm going to call them gotchas. You know, there are times that I have individuals who say, hey, I reached out to this mentor and they said no. And I'm like, well, that person is like the CEO of like a Fortune 1000 organization. Like the likelihood of them saying yes is very slim. So, you know, make sure that the people that you're asking align with your purpose or desired outcome. And be, I'm going to say be realistic around it. So, you know, there might be 100 things that you want a mentor to have, right? I want it to be somebody who went to my university, who's got a degree in engineering, who has worked at XYZ company, who, you know, has been an entrepreneur, who's, you know, worked in startup, who was able to get venture capital funding. You might not be able to find somebody that has all 6 of those things. So when you take your step back and really look at the purpose of the desired outcome, you know, identify what the why is more so than this list of criteria that you're looking for. Because if you're looking to start up a business, you don't necessarily need somebody who's got an engineering degree. You need somebody who knows how to start up a business. If you're looking at getting venture capital funding, you don't necessarily need somebody who's started up a business and gotten venture capital funding. You just need somebody who knows how to get venture capital funding. So be a little bit careful about creating this huge laundry list of things that you're looking for. And then the 5th one is craft that communication that brings all of those things together and reach out. And I have to tell you, LinkedIn is probably the best tool for doing this. So please do leverage it. And I'm going to say, don't hesitate doing it just because you might feel a little bit uncomfortable. So, you know, I'll give you a great example. Back in October of last year, I started this new role as partner leader for the Americas. I used to run the Canadian organization for CommScope. So leading partners in the channel, brand new role for me. And I was looking for some mentors who were going to help me better understand this whole concept of channel and partners. And so, you know, I defined my purpose and my why. I figured out that, you know, I'm probably better face-to-face video versus over the phone. And I went to LinkedIn and sent some notes out. And I have to tell you, I was scared, nervous, you know, kind of was like, who am I to be asking these individuals for feedback or for help in terms of being my mentor? And that's normal. It's normal to feel a little bit uncomfortable about it. And the last piece I'm going to say is, if they say no, it's their no, not your no. You never know what's going on in somebody's life. They could be starting a new role. They could have you know, health issues. They could have just welcomed a new child into their lives. They could have just started the new job and not know or understand it well enough to feel comfortable doing that. And so just remember, if the person doesn't respond or they don't say yes, it's not a reflection on you. It's really a reflection of where they are in their life today and in their journey, that it just might not make sense to them. So don't use an initial no as the step that stops you from moving forward. Just go back and run through this process, these 5 steps again, to make sure that you've clearly identified what your purpose is or what your why is and what the desired outcome is, and make sure that you've chosen somebody that makes sense. Let's talk a little bit about imposter syndrome. I really do think that this is one of the areas that mentorship can assist with, but I also think that it's one of the areas that that really results in people being hesitant to actually going and searching out for a mentor and asking somebody to mentor them, because you have that nagging voice in the back of your head, just like I talked about, like, why would this person who runs a global channel want to help me? They don't know me. They probably are going to look and say, well, you've already got the title. How could you not know what you're doing? So, mentorship really is finding an ally. So finding a group of colleagues or a peer or someone who can help you feel like you belong can really identify and be able to communicate back to you the value and the expertise that you bring to a specific role or to a specific industry or environment. And so, don't let that feeling, that nagging feeling of not being good enough or perhaps not having enough experience or expertise, don't let that nagging voice in your head be the thing that leads you to not reach out and not take that first step. All right, so let's talk about some practical tips as it pertains to mentorship. So here's the first one that I really do want to highlight, is that your mentor is a volunteer. And so that means you really need to take time to recognize that you are using part of their valuable time. And so it needs to be focused and there needs to be value to it. And I'll kind of give you a little bit of an example. I mentored a young student who had just graduated from a university in Toronto, which is where I'm based. And he showed up and, obviously this mentorship didn't last very long, but he showed up and he was like, okay, so like, what can you tell me? And I was like, what can I tell you about what? And he's like, well, what's like all the important things that you think I need to know? And, that was a real tough conversation. And I did ask him to then go back and give some thought as to what he was trying to achieve, because my experience isn't necessarily going to be his experience, especially if we're in different industries, especially if he's really focused on doing something completely different than what I've done in my career. And so I would say, take responsibility for your own learning and be really specific around what your expectations are. And that's why that defined purpose or why is so critical, so that you can really focus on the things that you want to get out of that mentorship. Otherwise, there'll be probably fantastic conversations and probably really engaging. However, you might kind of walk away from the relationship not feeling like you got what you were looking for. So that's the first one, volunteer. The second one, set some realistic expectations. And we talked a little bit already around, having this laundry list of things that you're looking for that may not be achievable in all of one person. The next piece is, be flexible and learn. In a lot of cases, what my experience has been, both as a mentor and a mentee, especially as a mentee, is that sometimes my mentor has shared things with me in terms of areas of focus or areas that maybe I need a little bit of work. And, your first reaction is obviously to be defensive. And so that means that in order for you to really be able to absorb the feedback that you're getting, that you need to be a little bit flexible and you need to make sure that you're open to the learning that the mentor is going to present to you and offer up to you. So I would say, recognize that sometimes being a mentee is uncomfortable and sometimes it's uncomfortable for the mentor also. So those two things to kind of keep in the back of your mind. The next practical tip, which isn't on this list, but I do want to highlight it, is that a mentorship relationship is not a forever thing. Now, that doesn't mean that you won't keep in touch with your mentor. It doesn't mean that you won't continue to engage with them. It's just that ongoing, reoccurring meeting is probably not something that's going to last for, 2 to 3 years. My recommendation is that 12 months is really a good kind of window. And as you go through that mentorship process, you're going to uncover some areas that maybe you want to focus on that might not work great for your mentor. So if your mentor has great HR experience, as an example, and then you decide you want to move into sales, you might need a different mentor. And there's nothing wrong with having multiple mentors over your career, but be very focused on what you're trying to achieve. And although I still reach out to the mentors that I've had over the course of my career, it's more so based on the relationship that we've been able to develop versus a constant mentorship throughout that entire process. So that's something else to think about. The last thing that I'm going to mention is look at time zones and locations. And so, if you're based in the Eastern time zone and you're looking at a mentor and you like to engage kind of early in the morning on the Eastern time zone, then somebody on the West Coast might not be a great choice for you. And so keep that in the back of your mind as you start looking at mentors, and be cognizant of the fact that, if mornings work for you, then you kind of have to look for somebody either, on the Eastern time zone or maybe somebody in Europe. And if evening works for you, then, Eastern time zone might not be the best fit, and certainly Europe wouldn't work great. So those are some practical tips just to keep in the back of your mind. Here's the last slide, and it's really about resources. And so, I'm going to highlight a couple of these, and you're going to get the deck. So you'll be able to click these links and get to the information. So, I'm going to say the top two that I think are fantastic are the cheat sheet for getting the most from your mentor, and the mentee expectations worksheet. And the reason why I think especially the worksheet kind of goes back to that first statement of being able to define what you're trying to achieve and what your outcome is. And that expectations worksheet does a really good job of helping you kind of put your thoughts together in a way that makes a lot of sense. And it is a great sheet to use in your kickoff conversation with the mentor or a potential mentor. It really does allow you to kind of be very clear and concise around what you're looking for, how you want to achieve it, why you want to achieve it. So please take a moment at some point after you get the presentation in order to explore these. I really do like the one about imposter syndrome. I think it's something that everybody experiences throughout their career. And so, certainly lots of learning as it pertains to that piece of it. But I'm going to pause there, and I'm going to go back to Olivia and see if we have some questions. I'm hoping we've got a whole bunch to run through as we open up the question and answer portion of our presentation today.
Yes, thank you so much, Karen. That was so helpful. And the participation has been really great in the chat, so please keep it up. So this might be a little bit repetitive, but we do just want to give as much clarity to our attendees as possible. So Marc Olivier, along with a few other people, ask, is one mentor enough, or what are the advantages of having multiple mentors at a given time?
So I'm going to say yes and no, and here's why. If you have some very defined things that you're trying to achieve, so let's say you're trying to start up your business, get venture capital funding, and redefine your social media marketing strategy, I would say yes, you probably need 3 different mentors for that. So that would be a yes. That would be a yes to it. Here's where I would say no. If you're starting out your career and you've just joined an organization, and in the back of your mind, you're like, well, I want a mentor to help me be a better salesperson. I want a mentor to help me get to a VP level job. And I want a mentor to, teach me everything I need to know about blockchain. I'm going to say no. That's a lot to try and focus on. And you're probably over complicating the number of things that you're trying to achieve. And so what I would say is take a step back, decide what your primary why is, your primary focus is, maybe kick that off start that maybe for 4 to 6 months. And then if you want to add something else in, then add it in at that point in time. But the fear is that if you overwhelm yourself, then you're going to need a mentor to help you manage the fact that you've overwhelmed yourself. So it really depends on what your why is, would be my answer. But, I would say, my main comment to everyone is your career runway is long, right? And so don't try and fit everything that you're trying to achieve in the space of like 18 months or 2 years. As you travel through your career, you're going to be exposed to things that would never have resonated with you kind of 18 months ago or 6 months ago. And so don't try and put so much pressure on yourself to try and do everything in a very short period of time.
I agree. Thank you, Karen. Another couple questions that keep coming up that I know you addressed, but let's just clarify. Do we have to pay our mentors? And is the tone of the relationship meant to be more personal or professional?
So you should not be paying your mentor. And so let me, I gave a little bit of a distinction between what I call mentorship and sponsorship. So the sponsor is the person that talks about you, not to you. There's a very big difference between mentorship and coaching. So yes, if you are looking for a coach, if you're looking for a life coach or a career coach, then you will pay for those services. That is usually in that coaching environment, coaches usually have like some kind of methodology or some kind of approach that they follow with all of their clients. And so you will definitely pay for that. Mentorship is all volunteer. So it's a volunteer mentor, and it's obviously a volunteer mentee. So you should not be paying for mentorship. Now, here's the thing that might be a little bit different. A lot of organizations have what I refer to as mentoring circles. Usually it's not an organization like a Google or an Amazon or, a national bank. It's usually a third-party organization that usually is for profit, and you will pay to participate in their mentoring circle. It is usually very much focused on where you are in your career path. So they'll have like, recent grads, then they'll have early career, mid-career, new managers. But if you're approaching a one-to-one mentor, you should not pay for that. So that was the first part of the question. Can you remind me what the second part was?
Yeah, so the second part is, should the tone of the relationship be more personal, casual, or more professional, formal?
Well, I'm going to say it kind of depends on who you are as a person. So, I can speak for myself. If I look at some of the most recent mentorship engagements that I had, given that they were during COVID, there were some real personal relationships because, individuals, I was struggling, they were struggling. So it became a very personal relationship. There's others that I've had that are very professional because that is what made the mentee comfortable. And so again, a lot of it has to do with, what makes you comfortable as a mentee. If you don't want to engage from a personal perspective, then you need to have that as part of your why, or your desired outcome, or your framework, if you want to call it that. And then you need to look for a mentor who's good with that. The worst thing you could do is want to have a very kind of professional engagement and then follow up with a mentor who's like all about personal. And so you need to kind of be clear about that. So it could be either, or even a combination of the two.
Great, thank you. Juliana and Maywish both ask, what do mentors gain from offering their time to mentees? It's hard not to feel like you're burdening them, considering how busy a lot of these people are. Do you have to sell yourself or prove yourself before asking someone to be your mentor?
So no, you do not have to prove yourself before asking somebody to be your mentor. Now, not everybody wants to be a mentor, so that's something to kind of be aware of. I would say myself as a mentor, my reasons for being a mentor are, if I just look at it from a Concordia perspective, right? I want to give back to my alumni. I want to give back to the university that, gave me the opportunity to really explore who I was and what I wanted to do. And so, that's a little bit of a selfish reason for me to want to be a mentor, right? And even though I'm not getting paid for it, it's a little bit of a selfish reason, but that's one of the reasons why I mentor. One of the other reasons why I mentor has to do with the fact that, it is difficult today to kind of rise up the ranks within an organization without knowing people, without leveraging a network, and you need to build a network. And because organizations do less of that kind of one-to-one mentoring, I really feel like the value that I bring to my mentees is being able to provide them a bit of a roadmap that isn't documented anywhere. And so you have to, I would say, there isn't a mentor out there who is mentoring who hasn't made the choice to mentor. So, by asking somebody to mentor, if they say no, it's because they don't want to mentor, whatever that reason is. But if somebody says yes, it's because they want to do it. And so don't ever think that that you leveraging what they have offered is you taking advantage of the situation.
Great, thank you. Chin asks, what are the pros and cons of mentors internal to your organization versus external?
So that is a great question. So I'm going to say within an organization, the pros of a mentor is that they really will have what I kind of said, those unwritten rules or the political landscape, right? So they'll understand, you need to be in that meeting 5 minutes before the person closes the door. They'll understand, don't touch Mary's coffee cup. They'll understand those pieces of it because they live it all day, every day. So there's lots of pros. They'll know people within the organization. So if you're looking for the opportunity to move up in an organization, especially if they've done that themselves, they'll be able to say, here's a great HR person for you to speak to. Here's another great resource. So they'll have a great roadmap for you within the organization. So there's a pro. I'll tell you what the con is. So the con is that you're working with that person potentially all day, every day, and you have no idea what's going to happen in your future within that organization. And so, you could end up working for that person. Maybe they're a peer today. They could end up working for you. You could end up both going after the same job. If you're going to share really personal stuff with them, you have to feel very confident that they will put that in their vault and they will not share it outside of your conversation with them. So, my recommendation to individuals is take advantage of the mentoring opportunities that exist within the organization that you're in, but just recognize that you work with these people all day, every day. And you don't know what that landscape is going to look like over the course of time. So just be cognizant of it. I'm not saying don't take advantage of it. Definitely take advantage of it, but just realize, that there's some potential landmines as it pertains to what you divulge as part of that relationship.
Great, thank you. Lily wants to know if mentorship is exclusive to certain industries or do all fields have mentors? For example, creative writing, tech writing, social media promotion.
So I would say all industries have mentors. I think some industries do a much better job of what I would call formalizing it. Certainly, I'm going to say the tech industry has done a really good job historically of formalizing it for a bunch of different reasons. And I'm going to say all of them self-serving. So, difficulty finding trained resources, difficulty keeping or people within their organization, difficulty hiring for diversity, constant turnover, bad press, perhaps. So, most organizations in the tech field will have some kind of mentoring program, but it might not meet what your requirements are. I don't see, I guess maybe if you're a neurosurgeon, you maybe don't have a mentoring program, but if you look at it, interns are kind of like a mentoring program within a hospital. So I think that maybe they're just called different things, but I would say every industry, if it doesn't have a formal program, there are individuals in that industry who would be more than happy to mentor.
And I would just like to, Karen, you mentioned Concordia Alumni Connect, the alumni mentoring platform. So on that platform, we have alumni from 40 different countries and over 70 industries. And of those alumni, over 600 are willing, keen mentors who want to support you and be there to answer your questions and help guide you through your next steps of your career. So, and those industries, of course, as Karen said, of course, we have some finance and accounting and marketing alumni, but we also have grads in film and communications and archaeology and all this stuff. So I do recommend, just because you think that you might be in a more unique career path, there are always people out there who are available to support you and who have similar career paths to you. And it's just a matter of looking for them and having the courage to reach out to them. So I would just add that.
Great point, Olivia.
Thank you. So Lucia asks if the person, presumably the mentor, said no because they already have other commitments, would it be okay to ask them again down the line after a certain time period?
Yeah. So, I mean, I would say, if you send them a note and they say, hey, listen, no, I would respond saying, thank you so much for getting back to me. Really appreciate you taking the time. Can you please let me know if I can reach out to you in a year and ask again? And if they say no, then you know that it's really a no, and that's kind of the end of that conversation. And if they say, hey, yeah, sure, or hey, reach out in 6 months or 8 months, that's exactly how I would respond. So yes, definitely.
Great, thank you. Then this is Leanne asks, would it be okay to cold email someone to ask them to be your mentor outside of a formal mentorship program? Or I'm going to add, do you recommend LinkedIn as the first touch point?
Ooh, great question, Leanne. So, here's my first statement. If you're going to cold email them, then you must have gotten their email from somewhere. And so I would maybe go to whoever gave you their email and say, hey, listen, can you warm this up for me by sending that person an email and saying, hey, listen, I just gave Karen your email address. Karen is, or, Leanne is in this instance. Leanne is someone that I know from university. She's looking for a mentor. Hope you don't mind that I forwarded on, hope you don't mind if I forward on her email address. That's how I think that should go. I'm not a big believer in just out of the blue emailing someone. I know personally, I end up with a whole bunch of those in my junk file folder, both personally and at work. And I just basically delete that file folder. I barely even look at it. So I would say, I would try and get whoever gave you that email or who's given access to that email to you to kind of warm that up for you. I do think that LinkedIn is a great tool for a couple of reasons. One is that you can just put on your profile, hey, I am looking for a mentor to help me with. And if you would have gone through those steps, your defined outcome, your purpose, all of that. If you've done your worksheet, you have even more information. And I put some of that in that LinkedIn posting and see who responds. So that's the first reason. The second reason is that if you look at somebody's profile, under their profile, they list out things that they are open to, right? So it says open to mentoring, open to not-for-profit board positions, open to, some of them say open to work, which I don't know how their employers feel about that, but nonetheless. So you can always go and look at that and see if somebody's interested in doing mentoring. And that gives you some real good insight to know who to follow up with. And you can look at their profile, and if they never talk about mentoring, then that it's, you got a 50-50 chance, right? of them being able to say yes or no. So that would be my recommendation. So I think both are great strategies. I think you just have to use them appropriately.
Great, thank you. And just following up on that, can you give us an example of someone who essentially language that you would be open to mentoring this person versus maybe language that would rub you the wrong way and you would be less keen to mentor them?
So one, it doesn't have to be a thesis. So that's the first thing, right? So it's kind of like you're asking somebody out on I always say that you're asking somebody out on a date. And so use your, you wouldn't go into, I'm 23 years old. I like chocolate, but I don't like dark chocolate. Like you wouldn't give that much information, right? So here's what I think is if you're using LinkedIn, here's what I think is a great approach. Hi, my name is Karen. Noticed, I've been following your profile, noticed that you're very big into mentorship with a focus on, I don't know, I'm just going to say sales in the technology space. I am currently doing XYZ and looking to augment my skills in that area. So impressed with everything that I've seen from you, would appreciate the opportunity to discuss the potential of you mentoring me. And that's it. Please let me know either way. Thank you very much for your time. Very kind of clear and concise. Here's what does not work, in my opinion. Don't just try and connect with somebody that you've never engaged with anymore. I get that all the time, and I just politely ignore them or decline them. So don't do that. The other thing that I would say, don't choose people where you haven't looked at their profile and you haven't followed them for a while, right? So, if you go through those 5 steps and you understand, okay, what you're looking for, then go and look for like 3, 4, 5, even 6 people that kind of fit that mold and follow their profiles for a while. Follow them on, Twitter, follow them on LinkedIn. I don't know if I would do like Instagram or Facebook or TikTok, or depending on what your focus is. If you're all about social media, then follow them on all of those different platforms, but follow them and then make sure what you're looking for resonates with what they're posting. The worst thing you can do is kind of craft that message and then send it to somebody who hasn't posted anything in like 4 months, right? Then it's kind of insincere. Sometimes I get notes from individuals saying, hey, listen, interested in you becoming my mentor, please let me know. It's like, well, there's no context to that. I have no idea who you are. I have no idea what you're trying to achieve. So, it's the difference between, it's kind of the difference between somebody, randomly showing up at your door, asking you for something versus, someone kind of sending you a flyer and then sending you another flyer, and it's a little bit softer. So that's what I would say. Don't do random stuff, and don't ask unless you've really kind of delved into their profile. And the other piece I would say is, also look for people who are retired, because I think there's a whole this is like a little pet project that I've thought about that I haven't done anything about, but there's a whole bunch of baby boomers who have retired really early when you think about it, who are looking for ways to give back. So, I would leverage that, as also another means of kind of trying to find a mentor.
Yeah, great. And I just something to pull out of what you've said that I want to be clear to our attendees today is that the role of the mentee is an active one. You're not, passively waiting for mentors to fall into your lap. You're the one doing the research. You're the one initiating the conversation. And when it does come to those meetings, you're the one who sets the meeting agenda, sets the expectations of the relationship, obviously, in accordance with the schedule of your mentor, but it's definitely not a passive role.
No, it is not.
And that leads me nicely into Par's question, which says, what does a typical meeting look like with a mentor? Should there be tasks that are accomplished, and who's setting these goals and targets?
Okay, so I'll start with the last part of the question first. So the person who's establishing goals and objectives is the mentee. So it goes back to defining that purpose or that desired outcome. So, maybe your desired outcome, I'm just kind of making this up as I go to give you kind of an example. So, maybe your focus is on maybe you're an inside salesperson today and you want to be an outbound salesperson, right? So you would then sit down with your mentor and you would kick it off right at the beginning saying, here's what I want to achieve. I want to go from my inside sales role to my outside sales role. And I need help determining what are the things I need to do in order to be able to achieve that transition. So you've defined what the outcome is. You've defined specifically what you want the mentor to help you with, and you've created the basis of your agenda. Now, depending on what the engagement is with the mentor, so if it's somebody that you work with who works in the same organization as you, they'll have some very defined steps that you need to take within that organization. They work outside the organization, they'll be more conceptual because every organization is different, but tasks will be part of it. Right? So it might be, hey, go sign up for Toastmasters so you feel comfortable standing up in front of a room of people. I know these are all like non-COVID scenarios that I'm talking about, but needless to say, we'll be past this COVID thing at some point and Toastmasters will resume. They might even be doing it virtually these days. And you'll stand up in front of a room and they'll give you a topic and you're going to have to talk about it. So there are going to be tasks. They might ask you, go build a PowerPoint presentation and then come back and present it to me. Go identify, 3 traits that you see successful salespeople having that you think you perhaps need some additional development on. So it is an active engagement. Sometimes there's tasks in that kind of scenario. Sometimes there isn't. And again, it just depends on what it is that you're trying to achieve and what your purpose is, what your defined purpose is to get out of that engagement. And so, it really goes back to what is it that you want to get out of that mentorship engagement and what is required in order to get there.
Great. Thank you, Karen. So just being mindful of time, just maybe a couple more questions.
Sure.
This next one, or these next two, are both related to age. So DDA asks, can someone's mentor be younger than them? And Jenny asks, what do you recommend for midlife career changers in terms of going about finding a mentor? Is the process the same? I find a lot of these mentorship programs are geared towards younger staff.
So I think you said Dizier's question was the first one about, can your mentor be younger? Yes. So, I touched on reverse mentoring before, right? So sometimes you're trying to learn a skill that, is more predominant in a younger generation. And I think my example was kind of during my days at GE, where we had these young individuals who just graduated from University of Waterloo, which, I was living in Toronto, so they couldn't be Concordia grads, but they were University of Waterloo grads who basically taught us everything that we needed to know about like e-commerce and the internet. So definitely, if you have a specific area of focus and that expertise resides with a younger individual, like go ahead and approach them. If the expertise resides with somebody who's like 90 years old, go ahead and approach them. I really don't think that age is a barrier to choosing a mentor. It's really about expertise and willingness to engage. So I wouldn't put age as a barrier to choosing a mentor. Now, to the second question, I can't remember the individual's name that you mentioned, but Jenny. So Jenny, mid-career is tough, especially if you're changing industries. And so, yes, a lot of the mentoring circles are focused on early grads and early career, or recent grads and early career. And so mid-career is definitely more difficult. However, I also think that it's one of the most exciting ones. And here's why. because there are so many people in that mid-career or even a little bit more senior from a career runway perspective who are at a stage in their career that they're excited and interested in mentoring. So if you came to me 20 years ago and asked me to mentor, I know that sounds like I'm really, really old, but anyways, let's say 15 years. So if you came to me 15 years ago and asked me to mentor, my answer probably would have been no, because I had just started a new role. I had a young daughter. I was just kind of up to my eyeballs in the amount of things that I was doing. So as people get a little bit further on in their careers, they don't have as many responsibilities at home. They're a little bit more comfortable in their roles. And so, I think that's a great, if you look at those 5 steps, I think those are great 5 steps to follow for mid-career. There are a lot of organizations that have mentoring circles that do mid and executive. You just need to look for them. The only thing that I would, and it's not a caution, it's just a highlight, that the mentoring circles really are more focused on a group of individuals versus one-on-one. But the steps aren't different if you're looking at mid-career. It's just, you need to have a really hypersensitive focus on where the person is in their career path in order to make sure that you're approaching the right people. And, if you need some help with that, I'm more than happy to follow up.
Thank you, Karen. And I do want to be mindful of the time. If people do have to hop off, please let us know if this webinar met your expectations, if you've thought it was helpful. I do just want to ask this one last question, which kind of flips the narrative a little bit from Nicholas. And he says, at what point should you consider becoming a mentor? How do you know when you're ready?
Ooh. So I'm going to say when somebody asks you. So I think, that's kind of that's a little bit of a funny answer, but to a certain extent, it's either when somebody asks you, number one, or, and I think this is probably the better answer, when you see someone that or you see someone that perhaps you work with who is struggling with something. We talk about mentorship like it's this really formal thing. And in most cases it is, don't get me wrong, 5 steps, right? Very formal process to go through. But sometimes, and I'm going to say a lot of the time, when I look at the engagements that I have today, a lot of the time it's me reaching out to someone saying, hey, how's it going? Because I've seen something that either makes me feel like maybe they're struggling a little bit with imposter syndrome, or maybe they're struggling, trying to get to that new role, or I see that they're getting a little bit frustrated, or that there's just this one thing that they're missing to kind of put all the pieces together. And so as much as it's about a mentee asking for help, a lot of times if you feel like you could help someone, go help them, right? Go ask them, hey, listen, is there something I can help you with? Hey, listen, I made that transition from inside sales to outside sales. It's a tough transition. If you ever want to talk, more than happy to help you. Look at the Concordia alumni piece. Maybe there's something you can participate from that perspective, and then let the people around you know, hey, listen, I just went through, I just landed my first job. I just negotiated, my first great salary package with extra vacation. I just got a promotion. I just got into this industry after being in a completely different industry. And let people around you know, hey, listen, if anybody ever needs help, let them know that I'm happy to help. Put that on your LinkedIn profile. The more that we, and I think that, I'm sorry to take up so much time with answering this question, Olivia, but if COVID has taught us nothing else, is the need for us to be kind and vulnerable at the same time. And I think that part of that kindness and that vulnerability is recognizing when other people are struggling with something and offering to help, not in the, hey, really stink at that, let me help you kind of way, but hey, listen, I noticed that you're struggling with that. Maybe there's something I can help you with because I just went through it, or I just accomplished it, or I just achieved that. And so I think everybody can mentor somebody on something, right? If you're graduating from university today, there is someone who is starting university probably tomorrow or in the next couple of weeks, right? Who probably could deal with probably benefit from a mentor who could help them kind of navigate through that whole brand new world of, being a Concordia University student, right? So I think there's tons of opportunities for everybody to mentor others. I think you just need to ask and you just need to look for them.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Karen. And thank you to all of you who took time out of your day to join us for this session. We will end it here, but we will be sending you an email in the coming weeks with the recording of this session. And Karen has generously offered to send you all her slides as well. And we will also include the additional resources that Karen has up on your screen now. One of the resources that were mentioned that we'll also share with you is Concordia Alumni Connect. So if you do have questions about that, don't worry, you will get more information. And we are pleased to be able to continue bringing you valuable virtual content. So keep your eyes peeled for those invitations and do let us know if this webinar met your expectations in the chat box. And finally, don't forget to follow Concordia alumni on social media for updates on our latest events and news. And thank you all for your continued commitment. Let's all continue to be our best and work together. Thanks so much again, Karen.
Thank you, Olivia. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.